A big thank you to my panelists once more. Now we head into the final segment for the day, and a very fitting segment as it's running close to dinner time, a closing conversation on redefining the future of food. We have here today Dr. Sandhya Sriram, Group CEO and Chairman of Singapore's very own food tech startup, Shiok Meats. And moderating this session will be Mr. Takashi Nakano, Nikkei Singapore Bureau Chief. Now, we're going to move into a segment where our two people who are fronting this panel will be talking about food tech and the innovations that are coming to the fore. So this will be an interesting piece for everyone to listen to. And Dr. and Mr. Nakano-san, can please proceed on stage.
Thank you, Sriram. This is a final but not least session. We have another wonderful guest, Dr. Sandhya Sriram, co-founder and CEO of Shiok Meats. Shiok Meats was founded in 2018 by Sandhya and Dr. Lin Kan-yi. The company develops cultured shrimp, lobster, and crab. And actually, Shiok Meats is a recipient of the first Nikkei Asia Award. We just announced this exciting news last month. So first of all, big congratulations on the award.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So this exciting news proves that Shiok Meats is definitely a promising startup. And we know your company has great technology and big ambitions. But there are still many people who may not know much about cultured meat. So first of all, let me ask you that what is cultured meat and why is cultured meat such a promising technology?
Sure. So I think most of us know what plant-based meat is. And why I start with that is I think the plant-based meat industry has revolutionized in the last couple of years. And we all know the Impossible Foods and the Beyond Meats and Omni Meats and so on. I think, given that we're talking about sustainability, food has always been looked at in terms of sustainability. And I think the whole pandemic has definitely questioned our choices of food and the whole supply chain issues with food as well. So one of the new technologies that has come as part of this food tech revolution is called cultured meat or cultivated meat. And what we do as part of that is we make real meat, but we use stem cells. So if you take a piece of meat or seafood that you eat now from a traditional seafood or meat industry, after you slaughter the animal, you take a piece of the animal, and what it has is cells, muscle, fat, connective tissue, blood, and all of that. So using biotechnology, where we used to make human organs outside of the animal body, we use that technology to use stem cells to make meat. So it is not fake or synthetic or artificial. We take actual stem cells and we grow it in large stainless steel tanks. So our manufacturing plant looks like a brewery, but instead of beer, it's brewing meats and seafood. So at the end of the day, you don't have to grow the entire animal. You don't have to wait for many years. Our technology works in about 4 to 6 weeks. So we can make lobster, crab, and shrimp meat in 4 to 6 weeks, which is much lesser compared to an actual lobster that takes about a year or two to grow. So what we are offering consumers is still meat and seafood, but just from a more sustainable source that uses lesser energy, lesser water, and lesser resources.
Nowadays, we see a lot of plant-based proteins in the supermarket. So cultured meat is a more complex technology. So compared to plant-based meat, what are the advantages of cultured meat?
So I would say in the future, we are going to always see plant-based meat and cultured meat together. In the supermarket, when you walk in as a consumer, you can choose. But the advantages of cultured meat is that it's actually real meat. It's not substitute. The nutrition is very similar. The taste is definitely very, very, very similar. So you're not letting go of the taste or the flavor profile. And what you're providing with is actual meat, and you're not telling consumers to eat something else that looks, feels, or tastes like meat. This actually is meat. So those are the advantages.
Unfortunately, I have never tasted cultured meat made by Shiok meat, but I'm sure you have had it many times before. What does it taste like? And I believe you're vegetarian, but you can still eat and enjoy a Shiok meat, cultured meat.
Sure. I'm very biased because I own the company, but it definitely tastes like shrimp, crab, and lobster. But we have had external people taste it. We have had chefs taste it and food critics as well. And it definitely tastes like the real thing. And it is the real thing, except that it doesn't come from a farm per se. And I think me being a vegetarian was by choice because I didn't want to slaughter animals. So this is a great solution for me because I want to taste seafood. I want to eat seafood and meats as well. And now I can actually eat it. And I know how it's made, where it came from, what goes into it, and what comes out of it. So I'm very happy. Yeah.
So you can eat them every day in the near future.
Sure.
So actually, Shiok Meat is one of the few cultured crustacean startups in the world. Other than Shiok Meat, there are only a few companies in the world that develops cultured meat. So am I correct?
Yeah, correct. So currently, we are one of the 2 or 3 companies that are doing cultured crustaceans. But when we started off, yes, we were the first ever company. And for the longest of time, I think almost 3 years, we were the only company that's doing cultivated crustaceans. We do have 2 other companies around the world, but I think we are going after a multi-billion-dollar industry. So we can definitely all work together to make sure that the technology is scalable and that we can produce our products for consumers.
So currently, your current plan is aiming to commercialize cultured shrimp in 2023. To achieve that goal, what are some of the challenges you need to overcome this year?
So this year is very crucial for us. So as I said, this is a very research and development based technology, very biotech, very R&D based, very laboratory based. And for the last 3 years, that's what we did. We made all the mistakes that we can make in the laboratory. We figured out how to do this because we started it from scratch without any prior research or anything. But this year is all about scale up. So we are going away from the laboratory scale to actual production scale. And I would say the most crucial 3 things for us this year is to reduce the price of the product to an affordable, will still be a premium product, but definitely not a few $1,000s, much lower than that. Second is build the first ever, world's first ever cultured crustacean manufacturing plant. And the third is to get the regulatory approval for that. So this year is all of those, and so that we can commercialize next year. So, yeah.
You just mentioned you have 3 challenges. So first is the cost. So I acknowledge that current production cost is around $800 to 1,000 per kilogram. To what extent do you need to lower the cost to make commercial sales possible? What do you need to do to lower the cost?
Sure. I mean, yes, we are at about $800 right now per kilogram. And we used to be at 10,000 3 years back. So we made quite a bit of progress coming down to 800. We'll be at about $50 next year when we commercially launch. Like I said, it is still premium, but it's not so premium. But to come from the 50 to, let's say, $10 per kilogram, and I'm talking about this happening in the next half a decade or so, I don't think shrimp is going to be just $1 or $2 then. It will be slightly inflated and more. So we're aiming for a $10 per kilogram cost. And for us to get there, it's economies of scale. We have to scale up this technology and have more consumers sort of accept it and have more countries approve it with regulatory framework, and then that's how we'll get to that price point. Yeah.
2023 is next year, so can you achieve that goal?
For the $50, yes, definitely. We're definitely on track. I think the only thing that might stop us a little bit or delay us a little bit is not getting the regulatory approval on time. Or if COVID continues to be there, there are logistics issues that we are facing a lot with even deliveries of our equipment, our consumables. But we have a contingency plan in place, and we always plan ahead. So we are hoping that at least by Q3 next year, we should be able to commercialize our first product.
Last December, I had the opportunity to visit your mini factory, which was a great experience to me. I understand that you're going to start operating another new plant for commercial production next year. So what will it be like?
So the mini plant that you visited is sort of a middle production plant between the laboratory and the manufacturing plant. So just imagine the mini plant in 10 times the size. And that's exact, I mean, not in the size of the square feet, but in terms of the equipment and so on. And that's exactly what the pilot plant will be. And we're building it in Singapore, and it will be ready next year as well. Because we are using a biotechnology, but using it for food, we are sitting in between biomedical and pharma and food. Very expensive niche technology from biotech, and we're taking it to a very commoditized industry like food tech. So I think we just have to figure out ways of making sure that we can scale this up. And every manufacturing run that we do, we get the same yield, the same quality, the same quantity, and the same taste at the end of the day. And we can maintain the same price as well. So that's what we're going to do for the next 18 months. Yeah.
So it sounds a very difficult task.
Well, what's easy?
Okay, right. So let's talk about the market as a whole. So how rapidly do you think the market for alternative proteins expanding in Asia? What will be the factors that will accelerate the growth of the alternative protein market in Asia?
I think for the alternative protein market, it's market research and studies have shown that it's going to be a couple of $2 billion. But I can speak for the cultured meat and seafood market, and the Good Food Institute has shown that will be at least $500 million in the next 5 to 7 years. I think that's a start, but it's nothing compared to the multi-trillion-dollar industry that the meat and seafood industry is. So to get to that scale, it is going to take us a while. But we also have to understand that the whole cultured meat industry is about 5-6 years old. Our smartphones didn't come to us just like that. It didn't happen in 5 years. It took about 15-20 years of development for us to get to that. And it's taken even more time for electric vehicles too. And we still don't have electric vehicles everywhere in the world. So it is a novel, new technology. It will take another decade for us to figure everything out and scale it up. And that's sort of when you can start seeing a good market share for the cultured meat market.
So the meat market, crustacean market is like as big as this room. Then,
as big as the ocean.
And cultured meat market is just like this.
Like the bottle.
Okay. So how do you evaluate the agritech ecosystem in Singapore? What do you think is needed for the Singapore agritech ecosystem to grow further?
So when we started in 2018, Singapore wasn't talking about food tech, wasn't investing much into it. It didn't announce the 30 by 30 food story mandate. So when we started, we were alone and we were doing what we were doing. And then in 6 months' time, Singapore announced the whole food tech sort of, funding and support. And I'm very glad we were at the right time at the right place. But I think Singapore does this very well. They plan ahead for many, many years, but they have a very good 5-year, 10-year plan. And they invest all the money, resources, manpower, government support. And you know what? They have succeeded in it because right now in the entire world, Singapore is the only country that has a regulatory framework for cultured meat. And the only country that has a commercial product, which is the chicken from the US company. So I think, they set examples for the rest of the world, and they have a very good structure and very fast, I would say, but also keeping in mind all the regulatory aspects, all the safety aspects, and the security aspects. But again, we have to remember Singapore is a very small country, right? We are 5.5 million, 6 million in population. We are a 40-kilometer east to west country, which means that's the starting market and the test market. We have to look beyond this. And right now, I don't know where to look because there is no other country that has a regulatory framework. I'm hoping Japan, US, Korea, China, India eventually come up with that. And I think Singapore, what it's doing is setting that example. But the only thing they have to do, with other countries is to see how we can scale and how we can globalize and how we can go from Southeast Asia to APAC to Asia to eventually global. Another thing that we should appreciate about Singapore is the consumers, which ties into your previous question as well, as to how will you get that market share. At the end of the day, the consumer is the king and the queen, right? So your product can be great, your technology can be great, but if the consumer doesn't like it, there's only so much you can do. So I think Singapore has the right consumer mindset. We have seen that about 80% of them are interested in cultured meat. It's from our surveys, other surveys that we have done. There's a certain excitement. There's international cuisines here, so we can try different things. And I think it's setting a huge example for the rest of the world, and that's what we're super excited about.
Not only Singapore, but the younger generation in whole Southeast Asia now keen on environment issues. So I see statistics that shows many younger generation is keen to having a cultured meat.
Oh, definitely. I mean, from the 80% that we have seen, and in Hong Kong we did a study and we found that 92% are interested. Most of them are the younger generation, for sure. But also, the technology and the food that we are making is for the future generation. Like I said, it's going to take us 10 years to get to that mass-scale production, and that means it's for the current younger generation so that when they grow up, they have sustainable food. So, yeah.
So as you just said, Singapore is the only country which has rules in place for the sales of cultured meat. So will the strict regulations be a major obstacle for you to expand into countries other than Singapore?
Yes, I mean, if another country does not have a regulatory framework, we can't launch our products, as simple as that. But having said that, I think the way we are making that sort of happen is, in fact, some of the companies in Asia are forming their own society for cellular agriculture, and we are trying to sort of, navigate the different governments, the different regulatory bodies, and seeing if they're interested. The US is definitely looking at that. We also work with international companies, other companies in US and Europe, to see what are the regulatory frameworks there. I think we've just started, and I'm definitely very positive that by 2023, there will be at least one more country that has a regulatory framework, and we should be able to expand to that one more country. And then you see 2 examples, 5 examples, the other countries will have to follow through. Because honestly, I don't think we have a choice, given that we are going to be 10 billion in population, pandemic or not, and we are having an issue with food supply and sustainable food. Yeah.
You may not agree, but some people say the agritech sector is still dominated, led by Western companies and Western origin technologies. So will we see more Asian companies bringing innovations to the agritech sector in the future? What are the conditions for Asian companies to take the lead in innovation?
I mean, now's the time for Asia, and we're already seeing that. It's again just started, so I think we are one of the pioneer companies to bring cultured meat technology to Singapore and Southeast Asia. So we started off somewhere, and now we're seeing a lot more companies in China, in Japan, in Korea, Taiwan, Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, Malaysia as well. So I'm sure that Asian companies are coming up, and this is where 60% of the world's population lives. So I think it makes sense that more innovation happens here, and we're definitely seeing that.
We have a question from the online, and this is a simple question. So how does the consumer know if the meat is cultured? Is there a mark in the labeling?
Oh, so for sure. So see, one of the key reasons we are part of this industry is to make sure that the consumers know what they're eating. So we don't want to hide, or we don't want to tell them this is real, but it's, in the background it's cultured, right? So for sure, we will label it as cell-based or cultured or cultivated. Right now, the entire world is going by the term cultivated, so we will stick to sort of using that. In Singapore, with the Singapore Food Agency, they are okay with any of these labelings as long as it is labeled. So you have to mention. And I think, consumers need to know what they're eating and what they're putting into their mouths and bodies. So we'll definitely make sure that it's labeled. And also, with the packaging, we want to make sure we explain to consumers what it is if they don't know. So, yes.
We had a good previous sessions, and all of them say, transparency, openness is very important. So it can apply to, agri-food sector.
For sure. Like I said, food we eat 3 times a day. it's a very important part of our lives, and it is what keeps us going, and it is what keeps us alive. And I think you have to be extremely transparent about that, and you, as a consumer, should definitely know what you're buying and what you're eating. Yes.
What are your predictions for the future of cultured meat? Will cultured meat become a food that everyone eats on a daily basis? If so, when will it happen?
For sure. I think it's going to be part of our staple diet. It's going to be available. In fact, one of our sort of big projects is to see if consumers can make cultured meat in their homes, like how you make bread, or you have a small bioreactor in your house, and then you have like a subscription policy where we send you cells and the liquid media, and then you put it in the bioreactor, and 4 weeks later you have shrimp meat. So why not? And that also solves the whole logistic supply chain issues as well. So you grow your own meat and your own seafood. And I can't wait for the day when it's a staple diet. When is it going to happen? It's going to take a minimum a decade for it to happen. So minimum 10 years. But I don't know, with technology, anything can be faster. But I would say for it to become mainstream, at least a minimum 10 years.
10 years, some say it's very long, but...
It's very fast.
It's very fast,
yes.
So last year, Shiok Meats acquired Kaeya Foods. So Kaeya Foods develops a cultured beef and pork products. So now you're entering not only in the fish market, but meat markets. So are there any synergies between Shiok Meats and Kaeya Foods?
So I think red meat is very different from seafood, from the technology point of view, from the nutrition, from the taste, from the look, feel, texture. All of it is very different. But what we liked about Kaeya Foods, and the reason for us acquiring them, was they are targeting the structured red meat market. They're talking about beef steaks, your pork chops, and those sort of things, and not just the minced meat side of things. So they're looking at really structured technology, and that's their IP, and that's their technology. And what we are excited about is using that technology to make our seafood structured as well. Right now, our shrimp, crab, and lobster is minced, but we'd like to make you a shrimp cocktail, sort of a thing, and we need structure for that. So I think those was that was one of the reasons we were excited about them. Challenges, I would say, are quite similar. Everything from scale up to the engineering to the technology to the price. But one thing that is an advantage for Kaeya Foods is red meats, or research on red meats has been done a lot. So if you go Google tomorrow how to grow beef stem cells, you will find more than 1,000 journal papers there. But you go Google how to grow shrimp stem cells, you will probably end on page 1 of Google. So I think the background research is there a lot. So that ways you can accelerate the product commercialization a little bit. Kaeya is it's a year-old company, so they're pretty young. But what we are wanting to do with them is how can our learnings from Shiok Meats help them accelerate their commercialization as well.
So you are a sales researcher, plus you're CEO, and you acquired the company last year, even before commercializing your products. So as a CEO, you are very aggressive, management style.
I guess you have to be aggressive if you're a founder of a startup. So I think there's no way to otherwise survive. And this industry is getting very crowded. You see a lot more startups. When we started in 2018, I think there were about 25 startups around the world. Not even lesser than that. Now we see around 70, 80 startups around the world. And when we started Kaeya, when we started Shiok Meats, Kaeya and I always knew that we'll do seafood, red meat, white meat, or other types of fish and everything. So this is the first step towards red meat. I'm sure we're going to do other types of meat as well. But we'll be opportunistic, and we'll see where it goes for us.
We have talked about food, the future of food. And now it's 6:30, so it's dinner time. So we are running out of time. So thank you very much for your time today. So we look forward to seeing more exciting news coming from Shiok Meats in the near future.
Thank you so much. And next time, hopefully, when we have this forum, we can serve you our cultured shrimp.
Yeah. Please.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.